Welcome to the AI+HI project. I'm Nicole Bradford, SHRM's executive in residence for AI+HI. Each week, we sit down with visionaries from business, tech, and HR to provide deep insights, actionable strategies, and practical advice on harnessing the transformative potential of AI combined with human ingenuity. Today, we're exploring AI's impact on HR with Brandon Roberts, GVP People Analytics and AI at ServiceNow. Brandon brings unique insights into how AI is transforming HR and organizational culture. Welcome to the AI+HI project, Brandon.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, your journey has brought you to the intersection of AI and HR. Could you share a little bit about that journey and then what inspired you to focus on this combination of technology and people analytics?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not sure I should admit this, but I was interested in math from a very young age. And even in high school, I was obsessed with statistics. And I got to college and learned about this concept of organizational psychology and understanding how to make work better for people, understanding how to make it more meaningful, how to make them more effective, how to work in an organization and make the organization more effective. And I just fell in love with that purpose. And that has been my driving purpose for the last 20 years. I've been in this space of using data and analytics in HR to make organizations better. And for me, AI and Gen AI really reinvigorated this purpose. It has this opportunity to create a human renaissance where people are not focusing their time on clicking buttons and mundane tasks, but instead are really focusing on innovation and creativity, critical thinking, focusing on those things that make us uniquely human. And so that's what inspires me at work every day. And I've spent the last 20 years at various technology companies thinking about how we use data analytics and research to do that.
And how does that apply to ServiceNow? What are you doing at ServiceNow in this area before we go into the broader conversation?
Yeah. So I'm leading AI for ServiceNow internally within our HR function. So I'm thinking about all the different components of AI. And I think there are a lot of different people components that we need to think through. So examples of that, right? We have this 4-point plan that we use internally. I'm responsible for driving that. 4 key pillars. The first is, how do we create an AI factory? And that's really thinking about, how do you take these ideas that are everywhere in your organization and convert them into reality and create a process that allows everybody to be a part of it, to be part of that innovation, but that also creates the right checks and balances and allows these ideas to flow through. So every employee out there in your organization has ideas. How do we get those, centralize them, get them to the technology teams that can build them, but also ensure that we have ethical reviews, data privacy, data security, all those important checks and balances. So that's one big part of my role, thinking about that AI factory in the process. We're thinking about building the tech and data foundation, data governance. How do we get the right data? How do we get high quality data so that we can really inform these AI use cases? I also think a lot about how we invest, right? Which technologies should we invest in? Where should we buy data? How do we get better data? And how do we ensure we have the right talent internally at ServiceNow and invest in the right talent to build the AI strategy of the future for HR? And then the last thing I spend a lot of time thinking about is enablement. So how do we train employees on the skills that they're going to need for the future? How do we train them about the foundational understanding of AI, how to use AI tools? And for certain parts of our organization, how do we train them on building these AI tools of the future? So that's where I spend most of my time today.
That's fantastic. One of the things that really draws my interest to ServiceNow is both the way that you are using AI internally, what you just described of the 4 pillars, and then also the productization that you're doing to enable other organizations to do it. So it's sort of, when we look across the enterprise, many companies are going to be doing the same thing you're doing for whatever product category they're in. They have to bring their people along. They have to think through, their version of the 4 pillars, and then that gets integrated into the product that they have. And so I think the ServiceNow story broadly is useful and interesting to other organizations, especially HR people that are right in the middle of these changes. So something you said earlier, and I love it every time I read it from a ServiceNow person, is the human renaissance. I just love that. I'd love to dive into your view of AI as a strategic necessity for HR. In your perspective, what makes AI essential in reshaping talent management and other areas in HR? And how should HR leaders be thinking about this shift?
Yeah. Yeah, I think AI gives us this opportunity to personalize experiences in a way that we have not in the past. It gives us this opportunity to make every experience we create pertinent in the point at the right point in time and in the flow of work. And so that sounds very vague and high level. Let me give you like an example of to me where this gets really real from a talent management perspective. I think skills is a great example of something that AI is allowing us to do differently and is allowing us to really leverage effectively to create better experiences for our employees. So every HR employee, almost every HR employee has a skills horror story from 10 years ago of trying to create a skills taxonomy, struggling with the data. AI fixes that challenge. AI is allowing us to manage data in a way that we haven't in the past and integrate it into our talent management experiences. So there are tools out there that help you understand the market for skills, understand what's coming, understand which skills are being competitive. What are your competitors going after? Skills also allows you to personalize the skills experience. So something we're doing internally with the ServiceNow product today is something we call proactive prompts. And what we do there is, hey, we know that you're certified in ServiceNow implementation of this product. And we know that you use this business intelligence tool. We can predict really accurately what skills you have. So this ability to sort of use data differently, create a centralized place and repository where we're predicting what your profile looks like, and then using that skills data to personalize experiences. So goal setting. When you set your goals, thinking about those skills. Do you have the right skills to support what your goals are? Quarterly growth conversations. When you're talking to your manager about what you want to do in the future, what skills will you need? And combining that all together into a unified experience for our employees is to me where AI is really changing things and why it's really important for HR to think really critically about what data you're going to need and how you're going to create these experiences that are integrated into a single platform, into a single place, so that everybody gets the information that they need and you create amazing experiences for your employees.
How should people think about what is augmented, and how should they think about augmentation versus replacement? And how would you define the role of AI in augmenting human work?
So, for the vast majority of roles, AI is going to augment what we're doing in the near future. Automation, although it does exist, there are certain roles that where automation may happen. It is very much people interacting with AI to create value for organizations. So we actually researched this at ServiceNow internally at our company. And we took every role in our company and we broke it down into tasks. And we said, what, what tasks is AI going to augment or automate? And how much of the capacity are we going to save over the next 3 to 5 years if we implement AI? And what we found was there were no roles at ServiceNow where every task that they were doing on a day-to-day basis was going to be automated by AI. There were zero. In fact, the vast majority of roles were between 10 and 20% of your tasks were using AI to make you better at it. And I think if you think about what you're hearing from employees, no one is saying they have enough time in the day. No one is saying that they get to focus on the strategic and innovative work as much as they want. If we can create this 10 to 20% capacity and reallocate that into new revenue streams, into innovation, into allowing employees to focus on that strategic and compelling work, that's going to make everybody happier. Employees want that, organizations want that. And we think that's the opportunity with AI. If you can implement it and remove those mundane tasks and let people focus on those uniquely human skills that create value for the organization.
In that analysis, did you find tasks that could be automated, but you decided not to?
We well, so there right now there's sort of a roadmap, right? So we've identified which tasks we're going to go after in the future. We've implemented some of those. We're going to continue over the next 3 to 5 years. Yes, there are definitely tasks that are automated. We want to there are certain things. For example, I'll give you an example: manager changes, right? We don't want to augment the experience of someone making a manager change. Today, HRBPs have to email people back and forth to figure out reorgs. Not a good experience. We want to automate that. Someone should be able to say, I want to move this organization over here. And then AI should be able to take that and change the data in the way that it needs to ultimately get to the outcome that the organization wants. So that's an example of something we're automating. There is definitely automation, but to me, it's more on the task level and not at the role level.
Great. I guess also what I meant was, have you come across tasks that could be automated, but you thought, nah, that's actually not what's best for the organization?
There are sensitive things, right? Like I think there is definitely a component to, you think about ER cases, right? There may be things in part of ER cases that we could automate, but there is a sensitivity to those, and we have to think about data security and we have to think about the ethics of all that. So that's an example of something that we, you know, thought about and said, hey, this is not the best use case for AI.
And so, as someone leading AI implementation in HR, what is your vision for how AI will transform HR practices in the coming years? Where are we going to go? And what do you think the long term impact of AI will have on that employee experience?
Yeah. So I think a couple things that I think we've learned along our journey and that I think are really important to call out. First is, technology is only half the battle. So we hear so much about people debating which technologies to implement. I think you really have to step back to that 4-point plan and think about your process. Think about how you're enabling and bringing along your organization. To me, HR has this amazing opportunity to put themselves at the center of this AI transformation. So much of what organizations are trying to do today is actually enablement, learning and development. It's a cultural transformation. It's things that HR should be at the center of. And so I think we have to grab this opportunity. We have to insert ourselves into this AI transformation and have HR be a key strategic component of how every organization is going through a business transformation. And AI is a huge part of that.
Some of the research that we've done at SHRM has shown that 1 out of 5 times HR is leading the transformation. 1 out of 4 times they're a decision maker in the transformation, and then 1 out of 3 times, like they're always in the room. They're always in the room because of the privacy and the data compliance. And so, I think you make a great point that this intersection of AI and people and an organization's truly most valuable asset. It really calls on and is an opportunity for HR to really step in. And some of the more anecdotal things that we've heard are, scenarios or companies where they approached it like a IT upgrade. Those organizations, like, they end up back at square one because then they realize, oh, it's not an IT upgrade. It's a social, cultural, behavioral change.
Yeah, and really thinking about all those components, right? You just talked about a few of them, but that's the concept behind this AI factory is start to finish, right? Someone comes up with an idea, who needs to be involved when from every function in the organization. So IT needs to be involved, legal, data privacy, ethics, compliance, HR. And you have to map that out. You have to think really critically about that process so that you don't fall into that trap, so that you don't start going down a use case and then all of a sudden somebody realizes that it's maybe not ethical or maybe the privacy concerns are too great. So all of that to me is really part of that thinking through that factory component and making sure you're involving the right people at the right time.
And one of the things you pointed out a little earlier is how AI can help HR focus on these high value tasks, why we should be in the room. Can you give examples of how you've seen, either in your own organization or in companies that have brought in ServiceNow, how AI's really enabled HR to prioritize that strategic high value work?
Yeah. So I think the HREP role is a really good example of that. If you think about what a lot of HREPs spend time on today, and this was true at ServiceNow a few years ago, as well. It's managing reorgs, it's managing changes in organization. We think that a lot of the technical or tactical work that goes through these processes that HRBPs spend a lot of time on, based on our measurement, about 20 to 30% of the HRBP's time is spent on tactical work. We think we can automate that. And we've already started to do that. I talked about manager changes. Reorganizations is another one. We've created a way for managers and leaders to work directly with technology to make the changes that they need in terms of, moving cost centers or moving managers, whatever it is, right? And creating that technology that allows them to move out of that tactical work and focus on strategy, focus on what the future talent strategy is going to be for the business that they support. And another example of that is a tool we call Now Assist, which is a ServiceNow product. It's our AI offerings. It's got a lot of different use cases within it. But what it does is just allow you have requests from employees, tickets come in, right? You have to support those. And AI can help solve for a lot of those requests that come in and actually deflect work away from your HR operations function. And we found that we've saved 20 FTEs per year just in our HR operations organization by implementing the technology. And what we're doing with that, how we're elevating that, upskilling those employees, is we're having them focus on process improvement. Instead of dealing with just a request that comes in, let the AI solve for the request. Let the person think really critically about how to make the process better, and think about how you implement AI and automation in the future to make even more deflection happen, even less work for the HR operations function. And that's upskilling those employees, allowing them to work on more meaningful work, and I think creating value for the HR organization.
So at the top of our conversation, you talked about the sort of like the 4 pillars. We like to hear about frameworks and principles that people are using. So up underneath the 4 pillars, when you're implementing AI, what are the principles that you use to ensure a balance between innovation and ethical considerations?
Yeah, there's a few principles that we really believe in strongly. I'll talk about the principles and then I'll talk kind of tactically about how we actually implement those. So for me, principles are transparency, visibility, and accountability. And you've probably heard in the market, people talk about this concept of AI should have performance reviews. That is something we really believe in passionately, is that we need to be able to assess whether AI is creating the right outcomes for our organization. So we have a tool internally that we use called the AI Control Tower. It is always on, constantly monitoring our AI models to say, is the data that's feeding those models continuing to be high quality? Are we getting feedback from the people who are using the output that they're getting inappropriate answers, or they're getting an answer that they wouldn't expect? All these things we're constantly monitoring as we implement AI so that we have visibility to when things get off, and when we need to reassess how a model is working or what it's taking in as a data input. So that's one piece. Visibility, right? Making sure that you're holding your AI accountable. And then the other thing I'd say is, I've talked about this a couple of times, but I do think it's really important if you build those checks and balances into the process. So AI's use cases shouldn't be happening in just a COE out there somewhere implementing some technology. There has to be that central governance and review before the use case is implemented to have those really tough conversations about ethics and appropriateness. And then once it gets past that, right, it's really about ongoing monitoring. And that's where that AI control tower comes in. But to me, transparency, visibility, and accountability for the models and tools and technology that you implement.
That's interesting. Would you say that your control tower is what people are calling guardian agents? Is it like a guardian agent?
So it's actually a little bit like almost above that. There's a components of that for sure, but it's sort of aggregating. That's like one component of it that is monitoring basically the implementation of the AI use case. The control tower has a lot more components to it, including things like the data inputs, and saying like, is there a inaccurate or data quality issue feeding the model? Guardian agents could do that as well. So yeah, that's relatively close, I guess.
So interesting. Okay. So let's talk about change. So, you sit in a unique position at ServiceNow in that you have been doing the internal change guided by your 4 pillars and the principles, and you're creating a product that is in the market that other organizations are using for their internal change. So what that says to me is that you have a great vantage point on change, especially AI change. So could you speak a little bit to your approach and how you think about fostering a culture that supports AI or AI compatible culture? And how do you really get the teams to embrace this shift?
Yeah. So it goes back to one of the pillars, which is enablement. And I'll talk a little bit more about what our specific strategy around enablement is. That's one big piece. The other part that I think is really important is leadership buy-in and engagement. I mean, with any cultural change, right? AI is really no different than every cultural change we've talked about over the last, whatever, 50, 60 years, right? It needs leadership buy-in. It needs modeling from leadership to do the right thing and use AI in the right way. All these things are really crucial to creating a culture that embraces AI. So let me talk about the enablement piece first, and then I'll talk about some of what I think we should be driving across HR from a leadership perspective. Enablement. So employees, our experience now, we work at a tech company, so it may be different at other organizations, but employees actually want AI to solve the problems that they face in the organization day to day. It's not a hard sell, right? That AI can help them be more effective. What we've found over and over again is that there's three things we need to train them on. So the first is kind of like a basic foundational understanding. We titled this like no AI. Every employee in our organization has to have a decent understanding of AI ethics. What use cases might be good to go after so that they can be out there looking, okay, is this the right use of AI? Is this a use case that I should bring to that central committee to help us be more effective? So build that foundational understanding across every employee in your organization. So we have a quarterly all hands that's specifically designed around AI. And we've brought in outside in experts on ethics. We've brought in outside in experts on technology, the landscape, the HR technology landscape, giving people that baseline understanding so that they feel comfortable. It's not this scary thing. They're not just reading the headlines. They have that foundational understanding. The second piece that I think is really important to create a culture where AI really creates value is what we call use AI. So anytime we launch a use case, whether it's our technology or something else we've implemented in the company, we build enablement around that use case. So really interesting story. We have functionality on our platform. It's called case summarization. Basically, an HR shared services agent, when they get a case, it summarizes all the information they need to know before they start. And we're finding that you get up to speed 37% faster using this technology. So we launched that technology. We think everybody's going to use it, right? It makes people more effective. It makes them better at their work. And we get terrible adoption. It's the first use case we ever launched. And what we found was they didn't understand what was going into it. They didn't understand exactly how to use the tool. They didn't have trust in the AI that we built. And so you're not going to create this culture of AI if you can't help people understand how to use the tools that are available to them. So anytime we launch a use case, we build that enablement around it. And to me, that's been really effective in driving adoption. And we saw adoption really spike in that tool specifically as a result of the enablement that we built. And then last thing is, you have to have the technical experts in your organization to build the technology that you need. So foundational understanding for everybody, use AI for the people who are using specific tools. And then what we call build AI is building the technical experts across the organization that really have that deep knowledge of AI and can help to implement and build the technology. To me, if you can do those three things really effectively, that really gets the wheels turning from creating a culture that embraces AI. And then the last piece, like I mentioned, is leadership, is getting your leadership to say, this is important. This is a priority. I expect you to use AI as part of your work. It's not cheating to use whatever external tool you want to use. It's going to make you more effective in your work, right? That's not cheating. That's how we're going to have to work. And AI is going to be a part of how we get things done in the future. And we need to set that expectation with employees and make sure they understand not only is it okay, it's better. It's going to make us more productive using the tools that are available to us.
And I love the simplicity of that. It's basically, no AI, use AI, build AI. Because some of the things that we've seen, for example, have been, when people don't when people don't know it, uh, they not only don't know what it can do, but they don't understand yet what it can't do. So it's sort of like the monster under the bed is much scarier when the lights are off. Like when you've been using it, you realize, oh, it does have these limitations. And then I think that's a good place upon, which someone can start. And so no AI, use AI. One of the other things that I don't know if you saw, Upwork did some research a little while ago where, um, it was on basically the net of it was that over 90% of the executives in the group that they surveyed believed that AI would increase productivity. But then when it actually got to the people, 77% of the people said it all it did was increase my workload. And when they dug into that, what was the case is that the people weren't actually trained to use it. And so it is sort of that thing that if you don't know how to use it, then, just start spitting things out and, and it increase someone's workload. So that's where the use it and then the enablement around like how to use it. What's going in it? How will I be judged by using it? Like what's the point? And then that build where people are able and empowered to have people close to them or on their teams that help them automate specific things once they've, contributed to what the right hero cases are.
Yeah.
Um, it's just really a powerful.
One
uh,
other thing on that I think is something that has worked really well at ServiceNow. We created this AI ambassadors program, which is basically in every function we have 3 to 5 people who are meant to be our deep experts. So they're really involved in once a month full day trainings that is really, really deep so that they can bring that back to their organizations. And that to me is really, really powerful. Building some of those experts that can take the information back to different functions in your organization. That really was effective in creating the culture and it relates to both the use AI and build AI, like you were just talking about.
So how do you measure it? How do you know that you're successful?
I think there's a lot of components to this, and unfortunately, just like most HR programs, right, measuring the impact on things like employee experience can be very difficult, right? We know that creating better experiences for your employees is a good thing. It's going to help engage them, but sometimes measurement is tough. One of the things we've had a lot of success on measuring is capacity savings. So almost every AI use case saves time or it saves capacity in some way. And so what we've done with a lot of our use cases is say, hey, if this, I'll give you an example, Gen AI search, right? This is something that's on our platform. An employee goes in, they say, hey, I want to understand what my benefits are. Well, historically, what happened is they got surfaced this 200-page policy document that gives every detail of our benefits. Gen AI search, really simple, indexes that 200-page document, only surfaces the information that's relevant to the employee based on their country, based on what level they're at, et cetera. Um, that saves 2 minutes every search. And we have multiple millions of searches every year at ServiceNow on our portal. So you start to measure the capacity of that, the time savings. That's where a lot of the ROI comes from. So we've done a bunch of studies to really understand that. And I think that's really important for our use cases, especially those that involve a lot of investment, is to say, how much time are we saving? And is it enough time to make the front end investment worthwhile? And so we do that with every use case that's above a certain investment. And we try to make sure that we have a consistent way of measuring that capacity, especially for our own technology.
Do you also measure what people do with their 2 minutes times 2 million?
Yeah. So I love that question. I think that's a really important concept, which is, hey, if they just use those 2 minutes and it goes into the ether, right? Well, it's not going to create value for the organization. So how do you reallocate that? And so that example I gave earlier of our HR operations organization, we actually measured that 20 FTEs are created from the AI. And then we actually said, what are we going to do with those 20 FTEs? And we added it to the roadmap. So I think that concept of not just launching it and just letting it go, but combining these things, measuring the capacity, and then thinking really critically about how do you reallocate that capacity to something that's important for your organization. And I think that a lot of organizations stop at the implementation of technology and don't think about that reallocation of capacity. I think that's something we're going to have to get better at. And even involve like even changing how we plan headcount, how we think about the future of our organization based on how AI is going to create capacity is something that I think we'll have to think more about in the future.
So, besides for that trend, what do you think 5 years from now, like what are the big trends that an HR leader should be thinking about as this AI landscape evolves?
Yeah. So I think there's a number of things that I would recommend for HR leaders that are really important to stay up on. There's two things that I really, really strongly recommend that people sort of dig into, understand better. The first is I don't think it should only be the AI experts who are of the experts on all the external tools that are available. If you look at how quickly AI tools are being innovated, I swear it's every week that something meaningful comes out with a new version, a new tool that helps solve a specific use case. We have to become experts on that so that we understand what tools are available externally that we can bring internally to our organization and help us really drive that capacity gain, drive that productivity. The other part that I would really encourage HR leaders to spend some time thinking about is, the legislation. Spend some time understanding the the EU AI Act, all those different regulations that are starting to be implemented. Because to your point earlier about use cases and identifying the right use cases, one of the key ways to identify the right use case is to bump it up against what is legally acceptable, what is the right way to use this data and privacy data and not offend people's privacy. So I think those are two things that I would recommend that people stay up to date on. I think the other part that I think is really important for us to think about as an HR organization, and you've asked questions about it throughout today, is ensuring that employees feel empowered to use the tools available to them, thinking through how do we involve them in the process so that they're not, you know, seeing this as the organization implementing AI use cases, but really a part of that innovation and improvement. And so I think if we can do those three things as an organization, we're going to be in a better place than we are today.
Excellent. And so we always like to leave our audience with a very clear direction. So I'm an HR leader. I've listened to our conversation. What do I do tomorrow?
Yeah, love it. Two things I'll say. So first is if you don't have a 4-point plan or an AI strategy, go back and develop strategies around each of those 4 pillars. I know I've said that a lot, but I think that's really important. That AI factory, thinking through the data foundation, the tech foundation, what's your AI platform? What is your technology solution to implement AI today? If you don't know the answer to that, that's really important. And then the enablement piece, right? Thinking through that. What's your strategy? How do you build a steerco around enablement or some sort of internal body that can help build the skills that you need to create the culture that you want? And then a few other kind of thoughts that I think would be helpful as really tactical things you can go and do today. So first is understand the AI landscape in HR. So if you don't have an understanding of what tools are available externally, I think that's really important. And then the last thing I'll say is start small and scale gradually. So find that use case that isn't controversial, that will create immediate ROI. Find that one and invest in it first before you go and, make large investments. Find that one use case where you can demonstrate an ROI and use that as a way to jump off and really, get momentum behind your AI efforts.
Excellent. And that's it for this week's episode. A big thank you to Brandon for sharing your insights and experiences with us. Before we wrap up, everyone, I encourage you to follow the AI+HI project wherever you enjoy your podcast. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to leave a review and spread the word. You can find all of our episodes on our website at shrm.org/AI+HI. And thanks for joining the conversation, and we'll catch you next time.
SHRM.